Good evening, everyone. I hope everybody can hear me. Try and get everything set up here. If you can hear me, please type in the chat box so I know I'm not just talking to myself. It's not the first time I've talked to myself, obviously, but, well, it may not be obvious, but it's not the first time I've talked to myself. Probably not the last. All right. Just want to see if you guys can still see that video there. Let's see if that makes any sense for you. And sometimes I just think it helps with a point of emphasis as to, you know, just helps to see the person speaking as opposed to just listening to somebody talk on the radio all the time. And then the next thing for me is to start my applications here. Great. Hope everyone can see the Excel spreadsheet that I have open. Does that work for you, Rory? Can you see it? Awesome. Thank you, sir. Well, I'm lucky. I'm back in my office again, 2 weeks in a row. Pretty happy about that. So thought I would try something a little different this evening, and let's see, make sure that it doesn't work for you. You're going to have the book that you can read about all of this time value of money, and you're going to, in the doc sharing is all the spreads, all the PowerPoints that the publisher puts together that you can look at as a reference. We're certainly going to, as part of your discussion and homework this week, you're going to ask everybody in the class. So we have 100 people in the class, and they're all going to go out and they're going to find tutorials to post links to those tutorials as a resource for everybody in the class to know how to do this. So there are going to be a lot of ways for you in this class, no matter how you learn or how you process, there should be something there for you to teach this subject matter that may be a little difficult for you. If you're not familiar with Excel or don't do a lot of math, this may want to be the harder parts of the class. But let's see if I can make it simpler. And I think the way for me, the way my brain works, the way to make this simple is to talk about it inside Excel. Don't get freaked out if you're not an Excel person. I got a couple of emails on that last week, which I thought was, you know, pretty simple, straight ahead Excel. But if you don't use Excel, I can see how that could be difficult for you. But as part of a business major at A&M Commerce, hello. Y'all need to get going on Excel. It's very, very, very important. So what I'm going to do is just talk about the time value of money and the book's view versus my view. And I would simply say time value of money is based upon the principle of, would you rather have your money now or would you rather have your money later? And if you're going to have your money later, don't you want to get some premium for that? Don't you want to get paid for having to wait to get your money? Well, sure. I mean, would you rather have, so let's talk about it. Would you rather have $100 now or $110 a year from now? Well, at $110, that's 10% interest. It's a lot more than anybody's paying on a house note or a car note these days, right? So what is the right amount of money to get paid to wait to get your money? And there's just a lot of things related to that. We'll talk about that when we talk about interest rates. But I'm going to talk to you tonight more about how to think about it mathematically as it relates to and trying to put it in some terms that make some common sense to you so that you can understand how this works. But really, the point is that money right now is worth more than money later, because money later is a promise for money later, and there has to be some calculation of the risk, etc., related to I may or may not get paid on that at some point in the future. So and if you have it now, you can have use of the money. You can do something with the money. You can, you can build a house. You can go on a vacation if you have the money now. But if you have to wait for the money, that's something quite different. And so there's just this notion of money now. It's fundamental tenet in finance is that money now is worth more than money later. And you can actually put a value on the net present value, the present value, the net, if you strip everything out of what's the present value of a stream of revenues of incomes, revenues of incomes over a period of time, and net that back mathematically as to what you estimate the value of that stream of payments to be. And that's what we're talking about on the time value of money. So we're going to begin to look at some different ways to look at this and read the book, take the quiz. One thing that's different about the quiz this week is it's really going to be in two parts. You're going to have a discussion item, which is you're going to have to post your links to your favorite tutorials that teach you how to do a net present value or an IRR calculation. Two, you're going to take the traditional quiz inside the course shell, which is going to be half the size as it was most every other week. So half the size of the normal quiz. And then we're going to break out and put independently a homework or on net present value in Excel. And the reason that we're doing this is that the university wants to be able to track how well the students are doing learning the basics of time value of money in Excel. And I used to embed the questions into my quiz, but by being embedded into the quiz, they could not get the level of analysis that they desired at the College of Business as it relates to evaluate how well we are doing in this category. Therefore, there's a separate spreadsheet that you have to answer a bunch of questions on, and there's the basic, simple, and an intermediate level questions around time value of money and how you calculate and how you do that and how you answer those questions are going to be answered largely through this lecture tonight, and then through the tutorials that you're going to you see posted from yourselves and others as to links and ways for you to learn how to do this. So it may seem hard at first, but it should be fairly easy at the end. So let's just jump right into it. So one, no PowerPoint. The quiz is quite different because you're going to have a quiz and you're going to have a spreadsheet in doc sharing that you need to fill out, and you're going to have the discussion. We talked about book view versus my view, and then money now versus money later. So I'm going to talk about simple versus compound interest. So simple interest is as simple as this. Let's say I've got $100, and I'm going to earn 8% interest on that money. So at the end of the year, I've earned 8%. And a simple interest calculation, each month then, each year, for example, I would earn that same $8 on that same $100. So at the end, I would still have my $100 that I had to begin with, and I would have earned 10 years times $8, or a total of $80, right? So my total ending balance would be $180 because I earned $8 each year on the $100. That's very simple. The power of compound interest is quite different and quite a bit more compelling. If you take that same set of facts with one small change, where if you said I have a beginning amount of $100 and I earned that same 8%, as you can see, I've got $100 times 8% in this formula. And by the way, all of these spreadsheets are out in doc sharing, and you can just go get them. You can follow along. You can, if you want to go back and watch the lecture later, have this open and follow along, you can do that. But so at the end of this period, you have 108 because you have 100 plus the interest earned, so you have 108. At the beginning of this period, because I left the 8% in, I begin to compound on it. So 8% on 108 isn't 8, it's 8.6, right? Same formula as above, but based upon a different calculation. So at the end of this period, I have 816. As you can see, as this cascades down, as the interest earned each month is higher because the principal on upon which that 8% is being calculated, you ended up with a very different ending amount at the end of that period of time because you have compounded the interest. You have rolled the interest back in. You have just rolled it over. And this is the real fundamental difference between simple interest and compound interest. This compounding effect is the time value of money. As you keep compounding, it keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger because you just keep rolling it back in. Right? Another way to try and show this is a simple compounding chart. And this is over 1, 2, 3, 4, let's say the same 10-year period. And all I did was just build a table out here that had, you know, kind of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then kind of percentages of increase. But you can see here that all it really does, I'm sorry for the jumping around here, but if you only have 1%, you barely begin to climb up. 5%, you can see it picking up a little bit. 10% with the compounding, but at 15%, the curve, the arch of that compound curve really begins to take off to where you have almost, if you compound, the difference between compounding 1% and compounding 15% is over 3 times greater at the end of 10 years in terms of what you have left over. That's the power of the time value of money. That's the power of compounding your earnings or your interest. Right? So when we talk about compound interest, this is what we're talking about. The ability to do more with the same. All right, now, another way to look at the time value of money is, let's say you're a lender or a borrower in this case, and you have to calculate what the payments would be on a car loan. And I've done something as simple as, here's the loan amount. And by the way, you can keep these spreadsheets forever and use them in your life if you want to. How long would you paying for that car over a period of time? What's the interest rate, and therefore what's the payment? All right. So what I have in here is I just have $20,000 as the cost of the car. I'm saying that we're going to pay for it over 5 years. Interest rates is 5%. So how did I get to that payment number? It's pretty simple. If you would just come out here to this little Sigma sign here in Excel, so you're in your regular Excel, you come over to Sigma and you just drop down, and I'm going to come down to more functions, and I'm going to look up payment. You can look it up in here. Just type in the word payment, and it will bring up, you know, the one that it thinks is the most likely, which is payment. And I'm going to say, okay, I want payment. The rate is going to be 5%, but it is not just 5% because I'm looking for the monthly payment, not the annual payment. So that's 5% annual interest. So I divide it by 12 to get to my monthly interest. A number of periods is a little bit different because this is an in per, which means how long are you going to pay for this? What's the number of periods in which you're going to pay for this? And so in this category, I'm going to come over here. You can click here and it'll give you something to go to, but I'm just going to come over here and I'm just going to click on the number of periods, which is 5. But it's monthly that I'm looking for, not an annual number, so that's 5 years. So I'm going to multiply that times 12. And then what's the present value? The present value is, what's the cost of the car? So I just come over here and take this number, and I say, okay, voila, that's my payment calculator. That's how much my payment is going to be right there built into your Excel. So the next time you're going to buy a car, you can go figure out what your car payment's going to be. The next thing I did was I took to get to the total payments, I just took this payment number times 5 years times 12 months. Therefore, I know over a 5-year period of time, I bought a $20,000 car, but I actually paid $22,645 for it. Simple? Any questions? Good. We're going to take it to the next level. Let's say you had a home loan. and I have come here and I've just done some very simple math and some very simple tables here. And oh, I should have made that my beautiful blue and gold for annual commerce, right? So the loan amount, let's say it's a $100,000 house, and your amortization period is 30 years. 30 years? Are you crazy? I'm going to make payments for 30 years? Guess what? Most house notes are denominated in 30 years. That's how you get your payments so low to buy something that expensive. So if I said, using the same methodology I use for the car payments, I've got a $100,000 house, I'm going to pay for it for 30 years, my interest rate is 5%, and therefore my payment is going to be that, and over 30 years, I'm going to pay $193,000 for a $100,000 loan. Man, is that a good deal or not? I don't. Wow, let's take a look at that. See if we can understand that a little more. So back to this notion when I was doing my compound versus simple interest, really simple, but think about the compound interest chart I did here, but think about it in the reverse where I'm going backwards, not up in earnings. So I have right here my ending loan balance on day one is $100,000, so my beginning balance here is that. Now I know my payment is $536.82, right? So that's what's in here. Well, I go back to my interest calculation and I can calculate my interest, right? So you can see the formula up here, or I can double click on it and the formula will pop up and show you where I got the numbers. So it says J7, which is the principal amount, times the interest rate divided by 12. Therefore, I know that buried inside this payment number of $536 are two different things. One is the interest I'm paying to borrow the money, and then how much am I paying to pay down the note? And in a traditional schedule, that is not the same. It varies as you go along. And it's very important to note that these two, while the payment remains the same every month for 30 years, the amount that's actually interest and the amount that's actually principal changes each month. So if I know the payment is $536, and I know the interest is $416, then the only thing that can be remainder is that 536 minus 416 equals 120. And those two numbers together, guess what, equal 536. You know, if you just highlight a couple of numbers, you can look down here and you can see the average, the count, and the sum. So I'm just highlighting these two to double check this sum versus this sum. So it's exactly the same number. So to get to this number, I've simply just taken $100,000 minus the amount of the principal payment of 120 to get to whatever's remaining in my, at the end of that month, how much do I owe on that note? And therefore, at the beginning of the next month, this number ties to that number, right? That's all I'm doing. And I roll this forward and I can copy that down. Well, let's take a look. Let's say after a year, I've been making all of these payments on $100,000, and after 12 months, I still owe $98,500. I hadn't even amortized $1,500. So the principal payment over that period of time is $1,475. Well, gee whiz, when do I really start beginning to whittle this down? Let's go out 5 years. That would be 60 months. Well, at 60 months, I still owe $92,000. Oh, what the heck? Let's go pretty far out there. Let's see how many months I've built into here. And I've got, let's go to 180, right? So remember, folks, 180 divided by 12 is 15 years. Right? At 180 months, I still owe $68,000. I've been paying on it half the life of this loan. I've been paying on this for 15 years, and I still owe $68,000. And so and you will see out here that there's a break point where the interest is always more than the principal. And then finally somewhere out here, somewhere after 15 years or so, you can see that the interest becomes less than the principal, and then you can actually start accelerating the amount of what you're paid off. And finally, I'm out here at 294 months. Let's see how, if you take that divided by 12, and why did I get 0? Well, if I say equals that divided by 12, after 24.5 years of a 30-year note on $100,000, I still owe $31,000. Wow. I hope you're sitting there going, wow. So as I come back up here to the top of my little schedule, I want you to remember this number. I'm going to equal this number, and I'm going to do something interesting. I'm going to hit F2, F9. I'm going to turn that into an absolute value, so it is no longer a formula. It is the number, whatever that number is. Watch this again. I'm going to hit equals, and hit F2, F9, turns it into the absolute number. Got it? F2, F9, absolute number. You don't have to know how to do that. It's just a trick. But the point is that says 93,256. What if I made that 50? So I'm paying $93,000 for the. What if I made that 15 years? If I pay off this house in 15 years, I've just saved $50,000 because my total payments $142,000 versus $193,000. And what did I do? How did I get there? Let's go back a step. I click the return key, and you can see that right now my payment is $536. So I'm going to take that number, F2, F9, and I know my payment right now is $536 a month. But if I turn this into 15, that becomes $790. So I say equals $790 minus 532. For the difference of $254 a month, I can save $50,000 in 15 years. Well, that may not sound like a whole lot, so let's wipe all of that out. Let's get a little more realistic here. And let's say you're buying what's probably a fairly typical home value price today of $250,000. I'm paying $483,000 over 30 years for this $250,000 that I'm borrowing on this house. All right, just so I can keep a reference to that number, I'm going to come up here and F2, F9 this, and now I've got that absolute number right there, right? Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to absolute number the payment. Now, let's make this 15 years and see what the difference is and what I can save here. $355,000. So in 15 years, I have saved $127,000 on a $250,000 house. $127,000. For the difference of a payment here, if I say 196 minus the 132, I have to pay $600 more a month during that period of time. So it's not free, right? But the point is that somewhere in here, you know, for $634, and if I said that, let's say I said equals that times 180, you know, it's $114,000, but it's all my money because it's all my principal. It's how much I actually owe. But I have saved $127,000 in interest. And frankly, if you don't like that number, you know, make it 20 years. And for an extra $300 a month, I can save $87,000 in 20 years. Not bad. Trust me, at some point you'd like to have that money in the bank, or you'd like to have it now to spend it. So, this is the point of the compound interest and how you should be looking at these things. Most people only look at one thing. They look at the payment, and that's the only thing they look at. Can I afford that payment in my monthly bills? But by understanding the time value of money is how you make money. It's how you end up with something that's a little bit of a nest egg. Okay? Any questions on that? Because I'm going to make it a little different. Now, there are things that are still out there, and occasionally, every once in a while, I still run into this notion of, the level payment. The level amortization. So what I did was I took $100,000 and I divided it by 30 years times 12 months. So you can see that every month, very differently here in this column, the principal amount is exactly the same each month. So what changes is the interest, because there's a declining balance of the amount of the principal each month, and therefore the interest goes down in a commensurate amount. Therefore the payment goes down each month, but the one thing that is constant every single month is the principal, and this is called a level amortization. I would say in 1 of 1,000 loans I see it today, but 20, 30 years ago you saw it more. And it was a very conservative way of looking at the world as opposed to a level payment amortization. And I really don't know that you need to know it that much in business in the future as much as it helps you illustrate how amortization and how amortization tables actually work. Now let's try and put it in another context for you, which is Starbucks. And I'm just saying, if you could, I don't know what you spend on Starbucks in a month, but if you said, I've got $250 in here divided by how many days a week would you buy a Starbucks? How many days a month would you buy a Starbucks? I'm just saying what. I'm making up another, let's call it 22. So if you spend $11 a day and you didn't spend it on Starbucks, or you didn't have a margarita, whatever your beverage of choice is, and you were able to save that amount of money over 40 years. Because what I'm trying to say is, if you were, say, 25, and one day you thought you might be 65, and you wanted to have some money, and you could save it over a long period of time, focusing on that compounding effect. If all you could earn was 6%, by the time you were 65 years old, you would have $500,000 sitting in the bank. And all you had to do was earn 6%. Now, if you're really good, and let's say you can earn 9%, that's $1 million, right? If you're 8%, it's $872,000. Well, let's say you can earn 6%, but you know what? I can only afford to put in $125 a month. Still, if you put in $125 a month into something that pays you 6%, on average, over 40 years, you end up with $250,000 for saving a few bucks on a Starbucks and actually putting it away and not spending it on something else. Now, I don't have anything against Starbucks, but I'm not saying Starbucks. I'm just Starbucks, McDonald's, I don't know, DVD, iTunes. I don't know what you spend your money on, but if you can save just a little bit and save it consistently over a long period of time and compound the interest. Now, you might say, well, look, I can't get that kind of an interest rate. Maybe I can get 5. Still, it's real money. And the point being is, if you were invested in something besides just like the savings account at your bank, and you were in a mutual fund or an index fund like we talked about a couple of weeks ago, this can really begin to add up, and you should be able to get into a 4, 5, 6% range of return over a long period of time by just being in a mutual fund at a time when you've diversified your risk, because you're in this big fund that's got all this other stuff in it. So it's not crazy to be able to accomplish this, but I'm still saying if you could target $250 a month, you could find a way to get as much as 6%, you've got $500,000 for saving $250 a month. Probably pounded that enough, but that's kind of the point. And really the point was when I first saw this demonstrated, it was back then you could try and get 9% a year, and it was probably closer to $200 a month. So the point was, how do you end up with $1 million when you're 65? And frankly, if you started when you're 20 and this was 45 years, it gets a whole lot easier, you know, to get to something that makes some real number sense here, right? And if you started at your 20 and you could save so much, you end up with real money. Let's talk about something a little more difficult, because this is going to be much more relevant and salient to your homework assignment this weekend, which is also, you know, like I said, this spreadsheet that's broken out separately is actually counted as part of your quiz grade. It's how do I calculate a net present value or a future value? And one of the things that's quite unique is most of the times when you think about, I'm going to earn $100 a year, $100 a year, $100 a year, $100 a year, you can begin to figure out pretty predictably what you think the future value or the present value of that is. But well, it doesn't work that way. And if you are in business, you're likely to make an investment in a project. You're going to build that Dr. Pepper plant in Peru, and you're going to expect to get some level of returns or cash flows on it. Let's say I built the Dr. Pepper plant in Peru. I make money, make money, make money, make money, but then guess what? It's time to refurbish the plant, because it's time to fix everything up, buy some new machinery, make money, make money. I got to put some more money in it, or I think there's going to be a bad economy. Make money, make money, make money, make money. I'm just making up numbers. I just threw random numbers into this chart. These numbers mean nothing. But then you've got to decide what's an appropriate rate at which to discount this stream of revenues back, or the stream of incomes back, because what we're trying to determine is what's the present value, NPV, the net, we're going to say net present value of this stream of incomes. Because I'm saying net, because that's if we calculate that, we can get the present value, but I'm trying to get to the net present value. Once again, Excel provides us with a beautiful formula with way to do this. We just come over here to Excel. We click on this little drop down. I come to more functions. You can type it in here, but it just so happens that I use NPV. So it's here in a more recently used function. I click on NPV. I say, okay, I want to do NPV. What's my rate? I've selected a discount rate. As you see in your quiz or anything coming up, there will be a number that is the interest rate, the discount rate. What's the appropriate rate to use? I'm going to say 10%. And these are years, and I'm not doing it by month, so it's just 10%. And what's the value of here of what I'm trying to determine? All right? And then I say, okay. But that's not enough, because what I did, all that gives me is what's the value of that stream. But remember, I had to invest this $500,000 to get to this stream of incomes, and so I've also got to come back and say, I want to take that minus, well, in this case, I think it's a plus. Oh, crush. Take this. I'm going to say, come up here. You can just say plus this number. That's my net present value. The reason is this is the investment. I've got it highlighted in yellow. It's its own thing. It's how much money I had to put in to get to that stream of income. So when I talk about net present value, right? What's the net present value of this? It is the value of this net of the money I had to invest to get to it. Anybody have any questions? And once again, you're going to go out and you're going to find a bunch of tutorials on the web. You're going to find one or two. You're going to post them. Everybody else is going to post them. So there's going to be lots of different ways to show it, but it's really that simple. And so let's talk about this net present value of the 679. If I change the number right here, if I go from 500 to 100, it makes a dramatic change, right? So if I go back to 500, you can see that the value goes back up. But if I come out here and make this 100, it doesn't have that much difference because it's so far out. It's the money right now that's the closest to now that has the most value as opposed to the money that's way the heck out there, right? And it's the negative cash flows that really get you. If these were just merely zeros, you can see the impact that it has. But if they're actually positive, you begin to have really significant impacts on the value. But the sooner the streams, the more valuable they are, and you can put any series of numbers in here you want, and it will change this calculation appropriately. And frankly, if you think you have this stream amount right, then you could begin to say, well, how much would I pay to have that? And you can what if and say, how much would I be willing to invest? And if I did that, what kind of a return would I get? So I think the biggest thing on present value is it's pretty easy to get this calculated, but it's really, really, really easy to forget to come back and manually add the investment to get to the net present value, not just the present value. So everything you're going to see on these quizzes and everything's about net present value. It's a quirk in Excel. Why it works that way, I don't know. It just is. Okay. Now the next thing to think about is future value. So if you kind of forgot about this little column right here and said, hey, if I had this stream of revenues, revenue, keep calling it revenues, and then stream of incomes, what would that be worth to me out here? So we can calculate a future value, right? And you can say, I'm going to come back over here to my little more functions, and we'll say, let me see future value. Okay, future value, and I'm just going to say my rate is the 10%, and the number of periods, I guess, is 12. And my payment is that. Oh, I guess I did something wrong. Let's take the 12 out. Let's see if that gives me my number. Ah, well, let's see what they did here. So I've got D3. Oh, divide times 12 divided CNC8. What did I do differently? So we'll come over here. Future value. D3. And the payment is, forgot my months. Well, I'm getting two completely different numbers here. Oh well, I'm going to give up because there's obviously something I'm not doing on the calc here that's right. But I think the point is, if you will look for all the tutorials, they'll be out there and available to you. And that's going to drive me crazy, by the way. I don't know why that isn't working. But I'm sure it has to do with the way I'm calculating this. Anyway, anybody have any questions before we shut it down? Because that's really just kind of it, and it's all out there for you. This will be either a layup easy or it will be difficult, which is why I think you need to rely on the tutorials as much as you can. Any questions? Okay. All right. Thanks, everybody. Talk to you next week. Don't forget to copy Bo on any of your emails to me. It just helps us to respond a whole lot faster. Thanks, everybody.